Have you ever noticed someone's act of kindness? Have you ever thought of sharing it with others? Welcome to our channel where we bring you the most heartwarming stories. Today, let us dive into the story of a school bus driver named George and his relationship with one of his students named Ethan. This man has been called a hero. You'll have to listen to the story till the end to find out what happened. It all started when George was on his usual route. He had been working as a school bus driver for over 20 years. George loved his job. He drove bus number 14 every day and knew all the children on his route. He greeted every student with a smile and waved to them as they got off the bus. It didn't matter if the weather was sunny or rainy. George made sure he reached every stop on time. Even after retirement, he chose to keep working because he enjoyed spending time with the children. One morning, George was driving his bus on the same route he had driven so many times before. Suddenly, he noticed something different. There was a boy at the last stop that he had never seen before. The boy was wearing a large backpack and seemed a bit nervous. As the bus approached, George slowed down, rolled down his window and asked the boy, "Hey there, do you need a ride?" The boy hesitated for a moment, then nodded shyly and stepped onto the bus. He sat quietly near the front, staring out the window without saying a word. After dropping off all the students, George turned around and saw the boy still sitting in his seat. He had never seen anyone stay on the bus after their stop, so he decided to ask, "Hey, champ, are you okay? Do you want me to drop you off somewhere else?" The boy finally turned to him and replied, "No, I'm fine, thank you." George noticed that the boy seemed sad and worried. He wanted to help, but wasn't sure how. The next day, George was surprised to see the boy waiting at the first stop on his route. He recognized the boy from the day before and remembered how quiet and withdrawn he had been. Curious about who the boy was, George stopped the bus and asked him, "Hey there, champ, where are you headed? I don't think this is your stop." The boy hesitated for a moment, then explained that he had just moved to town and was supposed to catch the bus to school. George realized that the boy must be new in town and introduced himself. "My name is George. Hop on board. I'll take you to school." The boy thanked him and climbed onto the bus. As the bus journey continued, George kept an eye on the boy, noticing that he seemed a bit uncomfortable and kept to himself. However, when George reached the boy's stop, he noticed a big smile on his face. From that day on, the boy became a regular passenger on George's bus. George learned that his name was Ethan, and that he was staying with his grandmother while his parents sorted out their divorce. Over time, George noticed that Ethan often appeared sad and lonely. He missed his parents and felt isolated in his new environment. George's heart went out to the boy, and he decided to do something to help. George started leaving little notes for Ethan on his seat, hoping to cheer him up. He wrote funny jokes, inspirational quotes, and even drew little pictures for Ethan to find. At first, Ethan didn't seem to acknowledge the notes, but George persisted. One day, George was taking Ethan and the other children to a museum trip. When he returned to the bus after the trip, he found Ethan fiddling with a drawing pad. George couldn't help but smile. Had his notes inspired Ethan to draw? George cautiously approached Ethan and asked if he could see his drawings. To his surprise, Ethan happily agreed. As George looked through the drawings, he saw images of the bus, the children, and even the museum trip. But what truly caught George's attention was a self-portrait of Ethan, beaming with happiness. George couldn't hold back a smile. His notes had made Ethan feel better. From then on, George continued leaving notes for Ethan, and the two formed a special bond. They shared stories about their families, dreams, and aspirations. George told Ethan about his late wife Linda, and how she inspired him to be a better person. Ethan listened attentively and even shared some of his drawings with George. One day, George noticed that Ethan seemed particularly sad. George pulled over and asked Ethan if he was okay. Ethan hesitated for a moment, then confided in George that he missed his parents and felt lonely. George understood what Ethan was going through, having lost his wife, Linda, 3 years ago. George knew that words couldn't always express the depth of one's feelings. So he did something unexpected. He pulled out his old photo album and showed Ethan pictures of his late wife and their life together. George shared stories about Linda's kindness, humor, and the impact she had on his life. As Ethan looked through the photos, he saw the genuine love and happiness in George's eyes when he talked about Linda. It dawned on Ethan that grief could be overwhelming, but with time and support, it was possible to move forward. Over the next few weeks, Ethan and George's friendship deepened. George continued to offer Ethan words of comfort and encouragement, reminding him that he was loved and valued. George never forced Ethan to talk, but simply offered a listening ear whenever Ethan was ready to share his feelings. One day, Ethan surprised George by handing him a drawing he had made for him. It was a portrait of George and Linda, holding hands and smiling. Ethan had captured the essence of their bond, which George knew was unbreakable. Tears welled up in George's eyes as he looked at the drawing. It was a touching tribute to his late wife, and a symbol of the connection she still had on his life. George thanked Ethan for the thoughtful gesture and promised to cherish the drawing always. Word spread throughout the town about George's kindness towards Ethan. People started noticing the positive impact George was having on the young boy's life. Some even stopped by the bus depot to thank George for being such a compassionate person. George was touched by the recognition, but he knew that he was just doing what he believed was right. He didn't seek attention or praise, but appreciated the acknowledgement of his actions. As the school year came to an end, George's colleagues and superiors praised him for his compassion and initiative. They recognized that George had not only helped Ethan cope with his grief, but had also created a supportive community for him. George felt humbled by the recognition, knowing that he had made a difference in Ethan's life. In the coming years, George continued to drive his bus route, always remembering the importance of kindness and empathy. He became known as the hero bus driver in the town, inspiring others to treat every interaction as an opportunity to make a positive impact. George's story serves as a reminder that sometimes the smallest gestures can have the biggest impact. His kindness towards Ethan saved the young boy from a difficult situation and showed him the importance of empathy and support. This goes to show that we should never underestimate the power of human connection and the ripple effect it can have on those around us. George's act of kindness had a profound impact on Ethan, helping him cope with his grief and find happiness again. The community recognized George's efforts and praised him for his compassion. George's story inspires us to embrace kindness and empathy in our everyday interactions. His legacy lived on, reminding people that even the smallest acts of kindness can make a world of difference.